I mean, even cousins that I know were abused as kids were went along, you know, aunts too. Like everybody's just going along with this abuse. Um, you know, and like again, I was painted as this negative, paranoid, know-it-all guy, and like in the last two videos, you can say, oh, you're just you know whining about the stealing, you're whining about the food and whatnot. But I think it's all tied together. I think the toxicity of a family can be all tied together. And to the extent that, like I've had two cousins from the same family commit suicide. Um, Drug addiction, alcohol addiction, more sexual abuse, just this ongoing thing, and these people just protect it. And so, I had to get away, but I'm not going back like Bruno did. Um, Good morning, Coach Brian here with Northwest Elite Spirit, and this is part 3 of We Don't Talk About Bruno, Dirtbag Diaries. Honesty is the catalyst for prophecy. Again, we're going over like the We Don't Talk About Bruno because the movie reminded me kind of my own life, where I would talk about things and point out things and be labeled negative and a troublemaker, and eventually was ostracized and chose to go live out in the woods in my car over it all. So this one's going to be about, and I don't know how to talk about this without getting, I'm probably not being monetized, but without getting flagged, because this is a story of sexual abuse. And my earliest memory of that sort of thing going on in my family is, and I don't remember experiencing it, but my father went to prison for sexually abusing my cousin. It was a thing, like I remember knowing about it, but like it's not a really clear memory. Maybe I kind of put it out of my head or something, but I never quite believed it. I don't know if that was because it's your dad and you don't want to believe it, but it was just like the things going on around us at the time. My aunt that accused him of it was, she accused people of a lot of things, for revenge or out of spite, and for lawsuits. She seemed to always be making things up to, I don't know, get whatever she felt she needed to get. Then I remember one day my cousin and I were capping on each other. Back then we called roasting capping. And she says, oh yeah, well your dad touched me or something like that. And it made me cry. I remember crying a lot, but then I remember thinking to myself, wait a minute, like we're just roasting each other. Why would she use that to hurt my feelings? And it's like that's when I started having my doubts about it all. And eventually I talked to my mom about it, and I asked her, did you believe that? Did you believe that? And she said, all I know is that if the jury said guilty, something or other, and I was like, that's not what I asked you. And again, it was a sign to me that maybe it didn't happen, because that's how my mom would misdirect. She thought she was good at misdirecting you, but you could tell that it was a misdirection. But later on, I was darn sure about what was going on, and this is with my uncle. My uncle was a guy that I was I had my daughter talking to him because, like, in our family, he was the guy that, you know, it seemed that you could talk to and that kids could open up to and talk to. And people would send their kids to him, you know, to, like, help them get straight or whatever. Like, I was even potty trained by him, and I guess a few other kids in the family were too. So when I was going through a divorce and we were having these hard times, my ex had kicked my daughter out of the house, and so she was living with me. And so those two were talking, and then I remember he asked me if he could buy her a phone, and I said no. But he bought her a phone anyway, which made me really mad. But how I didn't handle it by blowing up. I just took it away and contacted him and said, "Hey, told you she doesn't get a phone, and you know, you overstepped your boundaries." At the time, I wasn't thinking that it was a form of grooming, but later on, I found out that it was. But his reaction was that same with the movie We Don't Talk About Bruno, right? You're being negative, you're being paranoid, and for me, I was called a know-it-all a lot. You're a know-it-all. And people gathered around him for that, and were like, yeah, Brian's a know-it-all, he's paranoid, and he's being negative. How dare I? Even people were saying, how dare you? So that blows over, and I decided to, like, you know, she's not going to be really around him anymore because of his weird reaction. I wasn't thinking anything with grooming. I was just thinking that was an odd reaction, and he was being a jerk. Come home from something one day, and she's talking to him on Facebook, and he said, I'm scared, you should delete our conversation history. And I go back and I read it, and I'm like, he's saying a lot of, like, undercover sexual things to my daughter. Like, this is really creepy stuff. And I call my mom in, and I call my grandma in, and there was somebody else there. I called all three of them in, and I show them, like, what he's saying, and they're like, oh yeah, that's not cool, that's looks like he's grooming her. And I was like, yeah. Call the police come, and I show them, print it out and show them, and they're like, yeah, that's like textbook grooming, and by the way, he's under investigation for some pretty gnarly stuff that we can't tell you about, but it'd be best that you keep your kids away from him. I say, okay, I'm gonna do that. So I do keep my kids away from him, and I start, like, sharing with all the family, everybody that's in contact with this guy. I start sharing the conversation with them, and I start getting, like, direct messages from people saying, what was it? Something about, like, it was like religious stuff. Oh, condemning. How dare you condemn him? How dare you treat him like that? You don't know what's going on. Things like this. And it was coming from some surprising areas. Like, wow, I was, like, taken aback by who was coming at me, with such direct proof, right? So I'm speaking out, and one day I end up kind of stranded in this little town, and I'm like, oh man, I have a cousin who lives in this town, and she works at this place, and I'm gonna go and see if I can try to get a hold of her. Found out she didn't work there anymore, but the person who did work there was, like, a really good friend of hers, and that person called her, and cousin came and gave me a ride, and I started telling her about this stuff, and she started telling me that yeah, he's been like that for a long time, and that she had spoken out. She had told people in our family, and they shut her down. She wasn't allowed to talk about it. And then through speaking to other cousins, I found out that this sort of thing was going on like a lot with a lot of different people, and everybody was shut down. Nobody was allowed to talk about it. But I kept talking about it, and I told everybody. And then one day, again with Facebook, people had come from, cousins and family had come from all over the United States to my main detractor, my main person who was like speaking out against me. They'd all come to her house and gathered, and it was like a celebration of this uncle. And like there was a bunch of pictures. People were like putting their kids on their like on his lap and like mugging for the camera and stuff. And it seemed like kind of like rubbing it in, like, look, we're all here celebrating Uncle Bob. And it was really eye-opening, but then at the same time, and so I was like, so then I started contacting people again. I was like, hey, what are you guys doing? Like, I showed you like what he was saying to my daughter. There's history here, like, that nobody knows about, or that everybody knows about. Like, so many people knew. It's insane. So go through that, and then, like, I'm still trying to like be good with family and stuff. And my daughter goes out with what's called the old hens in our family. Just the elder women would have like a ladies' day that they would go out on. They go out on this ladies' day, and they get back, and my daughter tells me that they went to this uncle's house. Not only did they go to this uncle's house, but all the women went in, and they expected her to go in too. She stayed in the car. He came out to the car by himself and tried to talk to her. And she talked about like the fear she had over that and just the confusion of that, And so ultimately, like, I told this story already. Mom moved in here to pass. But before I had offered her to move in here to pass before that, because I knew she was sick, and the whole family knew, and she moved in with the aunt who, like I said, my main detractor. But I had this rule that if she was going to come here, like, the people who took my daughter to his house were not going to be here. The thieves in the family were not going to be here. And anybody who like enabled any of that was not going to be here. Like, they just weren't going to visit. So find out it looks like mom's being abused. Somebody did steal from her, so she's going to move in here. I go to pick her up, and the aunt asked me if that's still the rule, that nobody's allowed here, and I say, yeah, no, none of you guys are allowed here. I start denying, nobody took your daughter over there, she's a liar. One of them, my mom's best friend throughout the years, well, your daughter never liked me anyway, as if that had anything to do with anything. My aunt was saying that I was accusing her of grooming, which I wasn't accusing her of that, but that is kind of what it is, right? You take a child who's being groomed to the child molester's house. That's grooming. So I'm going to leave, and she goes bawling to her son, and he comes out trying to fight me. And the thing about him was, like, man, this sickness goes so deep. I remember he would always be like, F that uncle, F that guy. Like, every time you talk about this guy, F that guy. And I'd be like, what's your problem with him, man? And he would just F that guy. He would never tell me. He knew this guy was like that, right? And then he tried to fight me over protecting my family from this guy. And that just goes to, like, the depths of this sickness. But again, I encourage you to speak about it and never stop speaking about it. Speak and speak and speak and speak. Find people you can speak to. and find people who want healthy lives and healthy um, relationships, and understand that your whole entire family may turn against you, and I don't think you'd be surprised at some of the ones that do. Even people that seem like allies in my situation were going behind my back and like undercutting me. Um, and that was another thing, so these people that weren't allowed at the house, they were so underhanded that so I had a list of people that weren't allowed here that I gave my mom, and that list got out. But when the people on the list went and told the story, they went and told everybody that nobody was allowed here. And so when it came very close time for my mom to pass away, and I was calling people and saying, hey, like, she's getting close, you might want to come visit, they were like, are we even allowed? I thought no one was allowed. And this might even be more gameplay because I guess the list got out and like everybody knew. So I don't know if ultimately they were just making excuses. But in the end, nobody came to visit. Not a single person. I think like 2 family friends visited when she first moved in. But yeah, nobody came to visit, and it was, I don't know, man, due to my family toxicity. So I encourage you to just keep speaking and finding people you can speak to, and to get away, even if that means, I know homelessness is hard, and maybe I had some more ability to pull myself out of that than other people. I just encourage you to get away totally and completely, because it's a sickness. It's never ending, and talk to people. And watch for your tendencies too, because my tendencies even after pulling away, my tendencies were to find people similar somehow. I don't know how I would do it, but I would end up around people similar. So go ahead. If this has, been helpful, share, and definitely comment. Comment your experience with this sort of thing, and share with other people who are going through this sort of thing, and let's talk about it. Again, Coach Brian at Northwest Elite Spirit. Thank you.